Well, good day, Prescott, and thank you for tuning in to another Prescott E-News Prescott Talk Show. My name's Glenn Martin, and I'm your host. And today I have Mitch Padilla, our newly elected, I guess would be sworn in, college board member for District 5. Thanks for coming in, Mitch.
Well, thank you,
Appreciate it.
Glenn. I appreciate it.
You bet. You know, before we get going, Mitch, a lot of people may not realize that we're in a temporary studio. So if you've been watching Prescott E-News Conversations, you'll notice that we're kind of in the midst of change, and we're in a temporary studio. We're going to have a bigger studio and a much better studio, more elaborate, coming soon. So the audio in this studio maybe not the best like it was prior, but it's going to get better. And like I said, we certainly don't want to stop bringing our guests in while we're doing this transition and while this change. So with that, Mitch, again, thank you for coming in, and let's talk a little bit about you. Where did you come from? What do you do? How did you get into this, into the board, and why?
Okay. Well, that can cover a span of many years.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of simplify a few
Reader
things
Digest
here.
version.
Reader's Digest version. I grew up in Southern California, on San Gabriel Valley. Went to high school out in Montebello at Cantwell High School and joined the service, joined the Navy. So I went active duty for 6 years and stayed in San Diego when I got off active duty and worked for what ultimately became AT&T. So I put 25 years in there as a communications manager. While I was there, I re-affiliated with the Navy, so I did another 16 years of reserve time. I retired out of the Navy in 2005 and out of AT&T in 2006. And meanwhile, during all of that, I had met my wife, Lori, and so we got married, and a couple little girls that arrived. And I had gone back to school again at night, and I went to law school as an evening student. So I did that 4 years around the clock. And I did that while I was working full-time, while I was in the reserves, and got through law school, and then it was just a question of waiting for everything to come together. So in 2006, we packed up from San Diego, and I hired into the Attorney General's office, and our first stop was Kingman. And we were in Kingman for 2 years and got a promotion and ended up in Prescott in 2008, and I stayed with them for a total of 12 years.
Amazing story there, Mitch, because a lot of people struggle just to become a lawyer, and you're doing it while you're working full-time, and I believe you were deployed, were you not?
I was deployed at the end of 2002 to about August of 2003, so I went over, being part of the Navy, I was what they refer to as a brown water Navy. So I was on the ground, and we operated basically river patrol boats right just up abutting Iraq from Kuwait. So I was out there for about 8 months.
Yeah, and you're, like I said, in your spare time you became a lawyer. That's an amazing story.
Yes, it is. And now after leaving the Attorney General's office, so I've got a private practice, primarily criminal defense right here in Prescott.
Cool. And you have a website for that, and we'll put the website up. So anybody who's watching this may need a criminal lawyer, by all means, there's Mitch Padilla. He can help you. Now, was that always your field, Mitch? Criminal?
Well, when I was with the Attorney General's office, I was a unit chief, what they refer to as a unit chief. So I had responsibility of 7 counties in western and northern Arizona, at times up to 8 offices. But the type of work had to do with child support work and child dependency work. Basically ensuring that we were working with what was Child Protective Services at that time.
Yeah.
So we were their attorneys.
Gotcha. So I was looking at your rap sheet here a little bit. Your rap sheet, sorry. Again,
One
you're
page.
criminal. You understand
It's
that.
1 page. I try to keep that rap sheet to 1 page.
You were involved with the Make-A-Wish organization. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Our daughter, Grace, when she was 2 years old, was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, which is cancer in the eye. And being a little 2-year-old, communication is not an easy thing. You have to kind of figure it out. So we were fortunate. She was diagnosed, and she actually ended up having her eye removed, and that took the cancer out of her body. And out of that, the next thing we knew, and Lori, my wife, was doing a lot of this, but we ended up connecting with the Make-A-Wish organization, and Grace actually got a wish through the organization. And then volunteer opportunities kind of came up. When you receive something nice, you have an opportunity to give back. So that's what we did, and we involved with them for well over a dozen years.
Oh, that's great. And you've got a lot of community service. You got, like I said, I gave a whole sheet here full of them, but just a couple of them. One of the things I learned from you a lot about Veterans Affairs when you were running for another office. You and I would talk and open my eyes to a couple things. Number one was the veterans courts, how they are working right now. You know, they're normally, and help me if I'm wrong, it's when you really get in trouble. When you have a veteran who really gets in trouble, that's when the veteran courts come into play. And you are always an advocate to getting that veteran the help he or she needed even earlier before they get to a felony level.
Yes. Veterans courts started up, I'm going to just say probably about 10 years back in the United States. And they began to catch on a little bit with in popularity, I guess is the way to say it. And they spread to all of the states. And a veterans court is, in simple terms, it's a diversion court. It's an opportunity for someone who has got themselves into a situation with the law for them to attempt, if they qualify, to do certain court-ordered activities like counseling, paying your fines, doing community service, things of that nature. And it's a regular check-in every couple of weeks, sometimes for a year. And the idea is to take a veteran who's in that situation and give them the opportunity to help themselves. So typically will have a great ending. Now, in Arizona, we have two types of veterans courts, and there's about 14 of them in the state. There might be more now. Yavapai County has one of those 14, but the one in Yavapai County is called it's a post-adjudicative veterans court. And what that really means is that as a veteran, after you've been convicted as a felon, then you have an opportunity to work the program and perhaps to lessen some of your charges later. They may be forgiven because you've been able to accomplish things, put yourself back on the right track. But there's two of those in Arizona. The rest, the other 12, are what I like to refer to as front door veterans courts. And that's at the misdemeanor level. And 2 years ago, when I ran for Justice of the Peace here in Prescott, that was one of the things I talked a lot about, that in Yavapai County, we don't have that. And what that really means is for lower level crimes, misdemeanor crimes that someone's going to be charged with, it's a front door. Let's get you before you go down the legal path and see whether or not you may qualify and what things for qualifications are like. If you're a veteran that's been diagnosed with PTSD, or traumatic brain injury, substance abuse, there's a variety of things that if typically untreated, somebody tends to go off the tracks.
Right.
So I think that the misdemeanor, the idea of getting someone at that misdemeanor level is the biggest thing we can do. I talked about it 2 years ago, and I know that there had been some discussions to get it up and running, and I'm not aware that it's running here in Yavapai County.
And we owe so much to our veterans and for their service and what they've done for our freedoms. You would think that would just be a no-brainer.
You would think that'd be a no-brainer, and I would tell you, I think that there's community support for it. And I'm just gonna, give you just a quick statistic here in Yavapai County. Of all the adults aged 21 and over in Yavapai County, almost 20% are veterans.
Veterans, yeah.
That's
Huge.
significant.
Huge community here.
Yeah.
So, if somebody's watching this show right now and said, that's a really great idea, how would they get involved in who would they talk to, write a letter or whatever, supporting such a program?
Well, I would tell you that I think that there's a lot of hurdles that have to be overcome. One, and probably one of the bigger ones for Yavapai County, is just the geographic layout. You've got kind of two population centers. You've got on this western side with Prescott Valley, and then you've got the Verde on the other side. So I think that that can present itself with some challenges. But if somebody really wanted to say, how do we get this going? You got to go outside this county, because the opportunity's been here for years, hasn't happened. So where do you go? I would say let's find our state representative and begin there.
I might know a state representative that might jump in the middle of that.
There may be one.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm sure you're watching, Quan. So that great points, Mitch. And another thing that you brought out, and I learned a lot, is way too often, we forget about our female veterans.
Yep.
And, a lot of people always think of the military men and, but there's a lot of women that are suffering as well with PTSD and some of the issues that you were just speaking of.
Yeah, and, I'd like to just kind of put a little bit of a plug out there on this. With COVID happening, really, as we all know, it just kind of shut down everything. And things will get back once it's been hopefully dealt with through vaccines and just in eradication. Some of the community programs kind of begin to spring back to life, but we probably won't see them for at least a year or so. But I did attend a women's veteran symposium 2 years ago, and it was a real eye-opener for me because, like I said, active and reserve, I did a total of 22 years. I'm a guy. I've kind of come up through that era in the military, where it was just male predominant. But in the next 5-10 years, it's anticipated that the makeup in our armed forces is going to be approximately 20% female. That's 1 out of 5 service members to be female. And the issues that women deal with for PTSD, for example, many times are just totally different than what guys deal with. And it's a real silent issue. And women veterans, as a general rule, I think are forgotten. And so it's important. I mean, I'm really glad you bring that up, because it's important that it gets talked about, that the whole discussion around women's veterans issues, that it become incorporated as part of all veterans issues. It's a huge problem.
Well, PTSD has always been around as long as I can remember. My dad was a veteran, and World War II guys. The common thread that I had always hear from the vets were, I was just doing my job, but that didn't stop the nightmares. It didn't stop what they saw in some of the things that they experienced. But we kind of saw a change of that during the Vietnam era, and we started to see more and more, and there were services for it. But I think the door is opening now for women for that same service, and we're seeing that there is a problem there as well. And again, hopefully with people like you and bringing the attention to this, we can change that and get everybody the help that they need.
Yeah, I think talking about it and keeping it near that front burner is one of the most important things. One of the groups, and this kind of ties in again with the Veterans Court and the idea of trying to give veterans that have a certain affliction, injury, to give them that opportunity to get services that they sometimes just don't have an interest in. And the reason they don't have an interest in it is because, one, they can't understand what that value may be for them, or they just tune out of veteran assistance and go off and live in their own world. But where I was going with that here is that some of the groups here in Prescott that are involved with the current Veterans Court and play a big role for a lot of veterans are like U.S. vets, and of course our VA. The VA hospital. I mean, there's 3 of them here in the state, and one's here in Prescott. So that's a huge service provider. But U.S. vets, they've got my number. They have a vet that has an issue or a problem or just needs some guidance in an area legally. Then they just call and get on my calendar. But I was going to kind of go back to the women's veterans.
Yeah.
The PTSD, one of the biggest issues that women are dealing with are sexual assaults in the military. And it is one of those topics that just kind of stays suppressed. And that is, that's a silent killer.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. So.
And we just saw not too long ago, Senator McSally actually came up and said that she was sexually assaulted while in uniform or on duty or during her service. So, it's out there. And like a lot of sex crimes, they don't come forward and they're not spoken
There's
about.
that embarrassment, I must have done something wrong, the whole everything we've heard through the years and stuff.
So let's change a little bit. So today, not only are you a lawyer, but now you're an elected person on the school board, Yavapai College. So what brought that on, Mitch? How did that occur?
I work full time. So as I mentioned, I have a law practice here in Prescott, and I want to stay plugged in. I want to still be involved. Pick the one or the 2 things in your life that you can say, I can commit myself to that. And I love education. Yeah. So I love talking about college, and when I say college, it encompasses all types, from trade schools to community college, where an associate's degree is being sought, to universities, and where bachelor's and master's and PhDs, and I just love the whole idea of talking to somebody who's young, and maybe they're not so young, but just kind of plotting out, okay, these are the kinds of things that you should be looking for. So in 2016, I started a small little business. It was college advising, and it's called My College Roadmap. And what I would do is I'd meet with parents and their high school students, for example, their kids. I do seminars at some of the high schools, and I would talk about how, as a student, how do you navigate the college application process? So if you're going to graduate from high school, just for example, and you want to go to Yavapai College, okay, well, so they've got college advisors there, and there's some financial aid people there that will assist. So you get information there. If you want to go to ASU or U of A, it's same kind of thing. And those are real big feeder schools here, the big universities in the state. So if you're a high school student, you want to go out of state. Now, there's nothing but question marks all over. And what I always tell families is, don't be afraid of the cost. You just cannot be afraid of the cost. They're going to range. It could be with room and board and tuition. It could be $50,000 a year at one school and $80,000 at another. So just don't be afraid, because once you begin the exploration process, you realize how the money comes to pay for it. And their student loans, I always call them a necessary evil. I took a student loan out with when I got my bachelor's from Chapman College. It's now Chapman University. I got a master's in business from the University of San Diego, so I took a student loan out for that. And I went to Thomas Jefferson School of Law in San Diego, and I took a student loan out for that. I paid them all off. So it's, it's something you just don't want to take more than what you need, but the money is there. So getting back to the college now, so what can I do? I work full time. how do I stay plugged in? How can I make an impact? Well, education's a passion, as you can probably tell. So I thought, well, I'm going to get on that board and figure it out. Kind of see how I can lend some insight, you know, my own personal experience, and also learn. It's part of the whole process. So I'm glad I was sworn in on September the 8th. And I was the only qualified candidate that submitted petitions and signatures, thanks to my wife. She helped quite a bit. And so I was the only one that turned in a package, so to speak.
Well, you know, before we get into the College Board, what you were just talking about, helping people and students and families navigate the college experience, do you still do that now? Or is there and if you don't, is there somebody that's watching this right now and saying, man, my kid graduates this year, how am I going to do all this? Can you give a recommendation to somebody who might be able to help them?
Well, I would say definitely rely on your high school counselors. That my college roadmap was never intended to replace high school advisors. It was to almost augment the process. So, and there were some people, some schools that were very receptive, and some that we got it.
Not too much.
Not too much. And that's okay. So for somebody today, I don't do the advising because one of the things that I made a commitment to the board and the president of Yavapai College, Dr. Ryan, was that I was no longer going to actively operate my college roadmap for a fee. So, but if anybody ever stopped me on the street and said, hey, I got a question for you, I'd be happy to talk to someone. I would say today, and especially with COVID, just because everything seems to have just contracted, rely on your high school guidance counselors there.
So somebody watching this again, Mitch, and they're saying, well, how does the College Board affect me personally? You might want to handle that one.
Well, all throughout Arizona, every county has the ability to stand up a college district. And most counties have, some haven't. And those that haven't rely or work with a county that is adjacent to them for their own county residents. And I think that Navajo County is one of those, for example, that relies a lot on Coconino. So, and if I have that incorrect, my apologies to those that are thinking otherwise right now. But for the other counties that stand up colleges, they got to get paid for somehow. So the residents, the property tax base funds the college. Okay, so you stand up a college, and then what ends up happening is that it's up to the board and the administration to work collaboratively to make sure that the taxpayers don't get taken advantage of, but that their taxes are well spent in furtherance of community goals, which is to help teach, help prepare people for employment, for jobs that will pay more, whether it be based on having a degree or having a trade. And Yavapai College does a very good job of that.
Yeah, so I guess the short term would be is you are a taxing authority, and property owners, if you look at your tax, there is a line that says college tax, Yavapai County College Tax Authority. So it does affect everybody who owns a house, and by taxing and taxing issues. So you have this board. Is the public allowed to come and watch this board in action, or how does the taxpayer have input to the board and communicate maybe some of their concerns or whatever they want to talk about?
Well, pre-COVID, the college board meetings were open to the public, so the public could come in and sit in the room while the board was convened and talking on various topics. Since COVID has come about, the Zoom meetings are now how things are handled. And as a member of the public, you can join via Zoom and observe everything. And you would have an opportunity if you did choose to want to raise an issue, you could. So hopefully, as I had said, once things begin to get back to a little bit of what we remember being normal, in-person should come about. Kind of hard to predict when that's going to happen, but the opportunity is there.
And our college is an important part of our community. I know there's a huge it's nursing program and several other programs you might want to speak about that I don't know about, but I do know about the nursing program. That's, I mean, I speak to a lot of the nurses in our community, and about all of them went through Yavapai College.
Yeah, the nursing program is probably one of the more high-profile programs there, because a student can attend Yavapai College, which is your typical two-year community college, and can come out of that with a four-year degree and go into nursing. And all of the medical field jobs are very good paying jobs. It's an educated workforce, and the likelihood is that it's going to continue to be a busy field, so great opportunities. But nursing is one of the more high profile. But if someone isn't going to go into nursing, for example, and they're looking, I mean, think about this. Yavapai College has a gunsmithing program.
Yeah.
And it is just it's just not a very common type of a program, but they've got one here where somebody can go through that program, become certified, and can begin a career of gunsmithing. So it runs, you know, just as an example, two different programs, and they're night and day from one another.
My son went through the college. He's an archaeologist, local archaeologist, and that's where he started, was Yavapai College. He got his degree at ASU, but again, archaeology was another one of the subjects that's taught over there. So there's a vast majority. And so somebody who wants to find out what is all offered, how would they go to find that out? I mean, as far as like administration, or do they...
You mean as far as the different types of
classes and programs?
Yeah, the website has a lot of the information for somebody who is comfortable maneuvering through websites. But ultimately, at the end, if they had a question, they can always contact admissions or the student guidance department to at least get pointed in the right direction. Right. At our last board meeting, which was a week ago, the professors, there were two professors that gave reports on their sabbaticals, and one of them had gone to the United Kingdom and had researched Jane Austen and gave a really interesting amount of feedback on what she got out of it. And the other professor talked about finding meteorites and where you find them and how difficult that is, and how what appears to be very competitive. Just again, if you're a student and you're looking for literary type leanings, it appears that the school just runs the gamut on things. So I personally found the meteorite discussion extremely interesting.
Yeah, I bet. That would be. So obviously you have a lot of background in education and your passion for it. You're on the board now. I recognize that you're relatively new, but what do you see as the biggest opportunity where the board can make a positive impact?
I think that the present administration of the school, Dr. Lisa Ryan, she is the president, and I think that she is just implementing a whole new approach to the role that the college plays in a community. And as I've told her, I'm very impressed with a lot of the programs that she's doing internally. Many of those things, of course, don't get publicity until they finally pop. But it doesn't happen overnight. It usually leads to lots of background work before you get there. So I think that the board's role is to encourage that type of out-of-the-box thinking to make sure that the dollars are accountable and that they're well spent. And you cannot get away from, you have a huge institution. It's going to cost money. Sometimes you just simply can't say, let's cut here and cut there, because no doubt, let's cut it 5%, because no doubt there's got to be waste.
Yeah.
That quite possibly could be a true statement, but you have to be able to identify where it's at so that the cuts are efficient cuts if you're making cuts. Otherwise, I think that the board's responsibility is to ensure that the college is delivering to the community something beneficial at a good cost.
Yeah, at the price. How many board members are there?
There's 5.
5.
There's 5.
And there's 2 new coming on this year. I know Chris Kuknio is going to be sworn in
He comes in
January for District 4.
District 4.
You're 5, which you're about 3 months into
Yeah.
your term. Is there anybody else coming on new? Or?
No, we'll have Deb McCaslin is the chair, so she's in the middle of a term. Ray Sigafus is also on the board, and he's in the middle of a term. And then Paul Chevalier. He is the lone board member who lives out in the Verde Valley. And a lot of the issues, there's always been, as I find now that I get my toes wet, there's always been a little bit of that divide on quote unquote equal treatment, or just ensuring that the wealth is spread throughout the county. And I think that's a huge challenge.
We've got a big county.
It is.
I think it's like New Jersey or something like that.
It's
big.
pretty good size, and Paul does a good job of raising issues that are specific to that side of the county.
One of the things I like about a community college, and this is just me, is if you have an interest in something and you don't want to, I'm not going for an AA or a degree or anything. Let's say I have interest in, I don't know, first aid or something. People like me, I can just go take a couple classes and learn that. You were speaking about meteorites, same thing. Kind of interesting. That's kind of weird, meteorites or something that is the unknown. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more about it. Go sign up for a couple classes.
Yeah, that's a great thing about a community college is that if you just want to take a class, you can
something that you're interested in, basket weaving, whatever,
and see what happens, and may lead to a second class.
Absolutely.
There's also certificate programs that can somebody that's in their chosen field, for example. If there is a certificate program in that field that can help elevate them to either where it has a direct impact in their work, maybe gives them the opportunity for a promotion, gives them an opportunity for greater earnings, or just simply satisfies their curiosity.
Interesting. So, Well, thanks, Mitch. Is there anything else you'd like to add and speak about?
The only thing that I'd like to add is I appreciate the opportunity coming on today.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
I like being involved in the community. I can't throw 30, 40 hours a week at it, but I do believe that the community needs to benefit. There's a lot of people that do volunteer work, and many times you never hear about it, and a lot of unsung heroes. So I think for all the residents of the county who do volunteer, whether it be 2 hours a week or 20 hours a week, I think that we all benefit from that. So I intend to continue doing something somehow, some way.
Somewhere. And volunteerism is great here. I mean, we have, everywhere you go, you're going to run into a volunteer almost. I had to go get some x-rays and went to the hospital, and the volunteer came over and helped me sign in. I mean, it's we're older community, if you will. A lot of us have time on our hands to make a difference somewhere. So again, it goes to whatever you may have as a passion that you may want to volunteer, whether it's at a food bank or in a hospital or at the college or something like that. I think every institution or a lot of the institutions here are always welcoming volunteers. So a great point. Thanks for bringing that up. Mitch, thank you for your service. Appreciate it. Appreciate everything you've done for our community and you going forward. Looking forward to seeing where you're going to go and where your path leads you. And with that, Prescott, I always close the show out saying thank you to our current serving, former serving military for keeping our country free. And Mitch, you certainly are right there, and all that you do for the veterans. Our law enforcement firefighters, again, keeps our cities safe and our streets safe, and we can't thank you enough. And I believe that our community is definitely behind our law enforcement firefighters. So with that, again, thank you, Prescott. We'll see you next time, and stay healthy and have a nice Thanksgiving. Take care.